Dad,
Hey, hon.
what's your favorite miniature plastic box of all time?
What, like ever?
Yeah, in your whole life.
I don't know. That's kind of a hard question. Are we talking about?
Come on!
I guess it would be the Foot Knights from Victrix that we took a look at last month.
Wrong!
Where did you even? Hey, everybody. It's Dan. Welcome back and welcome to another plastic miniature review video, this time for the newly released and I think much anticipated Victrix Medieval Foot Sergeants, following closely on the heels of their Medieval Foot Knights, which were released about a month ago. We did the review on this channel. I'm actually a little late to the party on this one because the tariff situation in the US, I won't go into the politics on that, but it is what it is. It slowed things down, shipping from the UK to the US by about 10 days. Something like that. So I'm probably one of the last reviewers to get this video up, but again, that is also what it is. But as with all of these reviews, this is sponsored by Victrix, as they were kind enough to send this my way to take a look at with you guys. So again, big thanks to them for their ongoing support of the channel. I'm really excited for this one because the 3-up, like the renders that they were sharing for this one, especially of like the face detail and some of the like armor detail, looks pretty incredible. So really quick note here before I dive in. If you're not familiar with Victrix sets, you should know that they come in bags like this, and so it makes it really great for like hanging in a retail environment. And I do sometimes get people stating concerns about like breakage in transit. You've seen a lot of my Victrix reviews now. If you're familiar with the channel, you'll know I've never had anything break, and I've been purchasing stuff from them directly for years, being shipped internationally abroad. But my general disclaimer applies, which is that if you do have any issues, just reach out to their support. They're really fantastic, wonderful people to deal with. So the contents of this set is 32 miniatures, which I believe mirrors the Foot Knights, if I'm not mistaken. And it's going to be broken up as 4 sprues of the Infantry, 8 per sprue. You get this little pamphlet that comes in the set, and we'll go over that in detail in just a second. These are beautifully done, I think. And you're also going to get a sprue of these polearms, which we'll take a look at. Except you don't get 1 sprue, you get 2 sprues. Except you get 4. There are 4 sprues, which is nuts because there are 11 polearms per sprue. Again, so 44 total polearms for 32 models, which is tremendous in terms of contents that come in this kit. So we're going to go through everything in detail. If you're not familiar with these reviews, welcome to the channel. I'm going to isolate each of these 2 sprues. We're going to go through, do a bits breakdown on everything. I'll show you front and back details of everything close up. We'll assemble some figures. I like to do a little bit of kit bashing. In particular, I'll have an eye toward the Foot Knights, see how they match up, maybe do some more Games Atlantic stuff too, just so you guys get an idea of scale between those sets. Then we're going to do some scale comparisons with other manufacturers in my collection, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. So with that said, let me put these sprues aside for a second. I mentioned I'll isolate 1 each, but I do want to show off these pamphlets. This is a new thing that Victrix has been doing. I think this is now the 3rd set that they've put out that has these full color pamphlets. The first one we looked at was their Germans, and the second was their Foot Knights. And this is so beautifully done because it provides the same information that the sets they've been putting out for the last couple of years have contained, which is these visual breakdowns of recommended assembly instructions for their sets. But now they're also color coding the sprue so that you can see at a glance like what can go with what without any issue. And I think this is just such a clever way of laying things out because it takes all of the guesswork away. Now, I make the same claim in every single one of my Victrix videos, and I proved it in the kit bash like extravaganza that we just did with the Dark Age sets, that you can mix and match these Victrix sets very freely, and in particular these these medieval ones are great because the arm attachment points are pretty much all exactly the same. And we'll look at that again in the build step too, just so I'll be doing some mixing and matching of these various pieces. But I just wanted that out of the way here at the beginning. As you're going through, keep that in mind. And in fact, yeah, it says it here too. It said it on the Foot Knights one that most arms will work on most figures. Again, I wish they had that like in big bold lettering in the middle, just so that no one is confused by it. But again, these are great assembly instructions to have included. Love to see these. All right, let's take a look at these sprues here. We'll start with the smaller, which is the polearm sprue, and I'll give you a shot of the front and back here. Remember, there are 4 of this sprue included within the set. 11 arms per sprue for a total of 44 additional arms. And there's a good argument, I think, that this is actually a mixture of some great axes or Dane axes in some cases. I've said before that I don't think all battle axes of this period are Dane axes, but I do get some corrections down in the comments when I don't call them Dane axes. Like, this looks more like a Dane axe, this looks more like a medieval battle axe to me. But anyway, they're axes, big ol' axes. There's 2 of those, and then the other 9 I think are distinctly polearms with slightly longer shafts, and then the slightly different head designs. And I imagine there's, again, I'll make maybe a French term for each of these different polearm head designs, but I don't know what they are, and I wouldn't be qualified to pronounce them anyway. You can see too, there's only a couple of duplicates. Like, this looks like it's a duplicate of this. This one looks like it's a mirrored image of this one, but even pay attention to the fact that the orientation is different, the hand positioning is different, and some of them are unarmored. Some of them have chainmail, and some of them have padding here. So there's really no duplication within this sprue other than the weapon like head design, and even that is minimal. So yeah, it's really beautifully detailed. Again, good mix of arms, and I'll show off again at the build step that I think there's a lot more customizability here than might even initially present itself, because like this here, you can see it's just hands, which I imagine on the flip side, yeah, as you can see, this is A9A, which is meant to go with these arms, the A arms, if you will. But I think you could very easily probably squeeze them into the chainmail arms that are loose too, but I'll figure that out once I put some of these together. So 44 total arms for 32 models, so that's pretty awesome, just even looking at that one sprue. Now, let's take a look at the infantry sprue. And there are 4 of this included in the set as well, for a total of 32 models. And bear in mind too, when I give you numbers of bits from this sprue, you're probably going to have to multiply it by 4 in order to figure out what's inside the set. That's just typically how I do these reviews. Let's start with these bodies in the center here, because let me see how close I can get without making the camera blurry. That's pretty good. You can see a really good mix of padded armor, gambesons, I guess is what they would be called, and then like chainmail halberds of various lengths, of various even styles, like among the padded armor. You got like this crosshatch design here, straight up and down, of various thicknesses even, like this one's much thinner on the padding. A good mix, again, the detail on even like silly things like belts. They do such a fantastic job of making everything look like it has movement to it. Let me flip it over here just so you can see the back too. There are 2 poses that have these detached legs, which look like, yeah. So this one you can see is flat, which if you put that on there would make it like kind of a defending pose. And then this one is more angled, so it looks like it would turn it into a sprinting pose just from the same body. It's so cleverly done. Same thing here, where yeah, it looks like you can make one guy like he's crouched down, or if you use the other leg, it makes it look like he's lunging forward, like running. That's really awesome. And even, yeah, I mean, look at the detail on the padding. Like if I zoom in really close here, that's about as close as I can get. But look, not only is there excellent detail in the like deep crevices here of the padding, but look at the little bits in the padding itself. It's going to be a dream to paint up, I think. And of course, great detail on like flowing robes and stuff. And then pay attention too to the foot gear, because some of them are wearing like boots, some of them have shoes, and then 2 of them actually have chainmail going all the way down. And I'd be willing to bet that with a head and some arm swaps, those would make some great, maybe like poorer foot knights, but it looks more armored to me than the regular foot knights. So anyway, yeah, fantastic stuff. Really excellent. I love how far they've come, really, even since, you know, the last few years in terms of like how they're designing bodies to extract more versatility from them. It's really great. Now let's talk about these heads, because there's some heads on the bottom here, but most of them are up here on the top. And I like to categorize heads. There's 21 of them. And let me zoom in once again as close as I can. And then we'll start going down the line here. So again, you've got 9 that are kettle helms. And I would call these 2 like kettle helms as well. There are 9 that are just armored helms, like this one. And then there are 3 that are unarmored. 2 more down here. And if I flip the sprue, more down here. So 9 kettle helms for 8 bodies. 9 just regular armored helmets of different designs. And then 3 that just have like padding, no armor at all. And once again, let me zoom in here, just so you can see the detail on these faces is like something I've never seen before. I actually want to try to use like a pen here just so I can point out the detail without my hand making everything blurry. But look at this guy, like there's a dimple in that chin, right? And not even just like some of the shouting poses like on this guy, but the face detail is just uncanny. I've never seen anything like this before in 28mm plastics. I mean, it's dramatic. It sounds dramatic because it is dramatic, but I actually got pictures of the renders slightly ahead of when everybody else saw them on Facebook. And when I saw them, I gasped out loud just because of how real they look. It's really incredible what they're able to achieve. So it's fantastic. 21 heads, 9 kettle, 9 armored, and 3 unarmored. Now, you'll note too, again, we saw the 4 unarmored polearm sprues, or excuse me, we saw the 4 polearm sprues, but there are a ton of weapons on this sprue as well. There's actually 21 total arms on this sprue. So I've done this a lot of different ways, but because the weapons are kind of scattered around the sprue, I'm just going to kind of rotate around, almost like in a letter C, and then I'll rattle off some numbers for you. So there are 7 just arming swords, like this one up over here, all pretty much in that design. You can see that they do a good job too of making like the hilts of the swords slightly different, which is neat to see. But 7 that are in that like arming sword design. There's one that I'm going to call a choppa. I don't know what else to call this thing. It's like a medieval machete. I'm sure there's a term for it, and in fact, it's got its own scabbard up here. But I wrote it down as a choppa in my notes. There are 2 axes, like this one down here. There's a loose one over on the right as well. 9 spears, and you can see some of them are just in one hand. Some of them are two-handed, which I think we've only otherwise seen on their Dark Age Huskarl set. Had some of these like two-handed bracing designs. And again, good like difference in length. This one's probably arguably like a command piece, but could just be a long spear. Same with this one down here. So 9 spears. There's actually 1 axe here. Again, I don't know that I would call this a Dane axe, but we'll call it a Dane axe for the purpose of the conversation. So 1 axe here. And there's 1 mace that's down here. So again, 21 arms. So 21 arms per sprue for 4 sprues is, by my math, 84 arms just on the weapon, like, or on the main infantry sprue. And then you have 44 pole arms for a total of 128 arms in this set of 32 miniatures. So your bits box is going to thank you for this one. Now, there are 8 shields, and you can see there are 2 different designs. Kind of the smaller heater shield designs and the slightly longer ones. And I think we see both of these designs on their separate like medieval heater shield set that they now sell separately. But cool to see some integrated here as well. There are 8 scabbards. If I come down here, and you can see these are their really fantastic medieval scabbard designs. Slightly larger swords, thicker too, but without being like thick in terms of like the depth of it, so it adds like presence to the model because it looks much more intimidating than a true scale sword. Same thing up here. And then once again, pay attention to like the detail on the hilts of the sword, the wrappings on it. It's really cool. And then there's a handful of musician options as well. So there's actually, for the first time I think ever, for their medieval or dark age stuff, we see a drum, which is neat, and there's also a horn up here, if that's more your style. And there you have it. So I think as they sit on the sprue, they're beautiful. Maybe some of the finest, most detailed multi-part plastics that I've ever seen. So let's see how they assemble. All right, here we go. So I've got some of these miniatures assembled. I'll show you how they look. So the first 5 are just straight off of the Foot Sergeant sprue, and I had so much fun putting these together. They're really easy to assemble. Minimal like mold lines. I don't clean these figures up much at all when I'm assembling them for review purposes, just so you can see if there are any mold lines where they are. And here you can see there's minimal mold lines in all the places you would expect, like down the side of a figure. But you can see even with like a fingernail, I can clean that up. So certainly with a file or the side of an X-Acto knife, you're gonna have no issues at all. There's another one with one of the 2-handed spear poses, and they're so animated. Victrix does such a good job with creating miniatures that like really feel like they have movement to them. And that's another good example there. Here's one with a polearm. Great details. And again, already inherently so full of character. Once you start adding on like heads and bit options, even turning the heads in different directions. Like this guy. And you could make a completely different figure just from angling the head in a different way. It makes me feel like if I was still playing like RPGs like a D&D or something like that, I would want even just one sprue of these guys to have in as either guards, soldiers, or I feel like you can make like proper characters out of these just because they got so much personality. So here's one that has the 2 variant leg options, and I wanted to try to show this to you. I don't know how successful it's going to be, but like here, oh, that works out okay actually. So you can see the one that has more of a flat top to it creates kind of like a walking forward pose, and then this one, let's see how successful I can make this. You can see is more of a running pose where it's angled back like he's lunging forward. So I think that's very clever the way they've done that, again with 2 different bodies in the same way to make completely different poses as far as I'm concerned, certainly than if you're mixing different weapons and heads onto them. And here's the conversion. This is using a foot sergeant body, a very heavily armored foot sergeant body, but arms and head from the foot knight's kit, and you can see that they scale up perfectly. I almost feel like they did all these sets at the exact same time because there's no issue from a scale standpoint. And in fact, there's a couple of bits, again, just to be really clear, that body is a foot sergeant body, and there are a couple of bits off of the foot sergeants that just look like foot knights to me. Like this one here just looks like an arm off of the foot knight sprue because it's, the hand's completely covered with mail. So there's a couple that look like that already, and then certainly once you start blending in foot knight heads, it starts blurring the line, I think, between like a man-at-arm and a knight. Here's a proper knight on the right with a tabard. I think I'm guessing it that correctly. But you can see in terms of height, they are perfectly aligned. So you make yourself some additional foot knights, I think, out of this kit. Here's one. Anybody that saw my Dark Age Pillaged Kitbash video will recognize the red body as one of the Norman infantry from their Dark Age line. So all I've done is taken a head, I've cut the hands off kind of at the wrists to glue into place here, and I think you can make a pretty convincing foot sergeant out of the Normans. So there you go. A couple more here. So this is the opposite conversion of the foot sergeant that had the foot knight bits, in that this is a foot knight body with foot sergeant arms and a head. And I think this is also very successful. Again, if you take a look at this foot sergeant on the right, it just feels like a very heavily armored foot sergeant. So I think that looks great. And then here's another one, this time with a slightly more complex conversion with the polearm. Back to my point, and by the way, I didn't use the schematic for any of these. I was just kind of going on feelings. But it makes it so easy with these sets because all of the models, or I should say almost all of the models, have these squared off like flat shoulders or arm attachment points. Like there's nothing cut off at the sleeve like a t-shirt, which limits what can be mixed and matched. But here there's no issue at all. And I had a couple of questions in the last video about how these scale up with Wargames Atlantic. And so I have here, this is a Wargames Atlantic guard. I think if I was redoing this conversion, I would add a little bit of like piece of plastic here as a spacer, but you can see the scale is correct. It's just that the neck attachment point isn't quite the same. But I think that looks fine. But the arms are also from Victrix. So Victrix head and arms, and then a Wargames Atlantic guard body. The scabbard is also Victrix. And then here's a Wargames Atlantic foot sergeant with head and arms from the Victrix foot sergeant kit. So generally, I think the Victrix stuff is slightly larger, like 10% larger. I don't think it's that noticeable. Certainly, if I take a foot sergeant here in a kind of similar pose, you can see that's a Victrix foot sergeant on the right, Wargames Atlantic foot sergeant on the left. So I think the Victrix ones are decidedly larger, but like within the realm of human possibility. So like I'm certainly going to blend these 2 sets together inside of my units. And I think you'd have no problem doing the same. Let's throw them on the Lazy Susan. I want to see how these scale up with my other manufacturers. Alright, here we go. So you can see spinning around here, we've got the plastic miniatures, which are the Victrix foot sergeants. And then everything primed in white. We'll have the name of either a manufacturer or a range listed on the base. Pay attention to, I'm normally make this disclaimer that some models have those splash or puddle bases on them and some don't. I never cut those off just because, again, that's how they come from the manufacturer. You're welcome to do so. I actually do that like within units. I'll cut some off and then leave some on just because it adds a nice little bit of height variety to them. So what's the final verdict? I mean, you probably could guess it at this point. It's fantastic, right? The biggest issue with all these new Victrix releases is that they keep invalidating my prior reviews in which I say that that is the best Victrix set released to date. And here we are again. This is definitely the best Victrix set released to date. And I know you guys are probably going to think I'm like I'm on their payroll at this point, but I'm not. I've been genuinely trying to like rack my brain over some criticism that I could level at this set. But from even like a layout standpoint, it's perfect. Right, like, because not only are they beautiful figures, right, they're easy to assemble, they're very reasonably priced too, like right in the middle in terms of price per model of everybody else on the market. But they're full of movement, character. I keep saying that, but it's obvious to me that they're also designed by people that actually put these miniatures together, because you'll never run into a situation like I have with even some sets that I've reviewed on this channel where you have like a weird number of bits, like say you wanted to make all 8 models with the same equipment. You're never going to run into a situation where there's not enough like normal left arms to hold a shield, right? Because it's obvious they think about that kind of thing. And I would venture to say from like a quality assurance standpoint that once they have the sprues printed, they actually like do that. They just snip them off the sprue and try to build all these models just to see if they can find any problems with them. So there aren't any issues like that. Really, it's a fantastic set. I would use it for D&D, I would use it for pillage, I would use it for mass battles game, I use it for fantasy gaming, right? They're just such good figures, and I highly, highly recommend them. So, huge thanks once again to Victrix for sending this to us to review. Again, you've knocked it out of the park. I can't wait to see what you guys put out next. I think their medieval ranged unit is up next. They're archers and crossbows, if I'm not mistaken. They've got some Dark Age, like Irish, coming out, some Carolingian Franks coming up next, so there should be a lot to look forward to this fall. Grateful for all of you for dropping by for this one in the meantime, and until next time, happy gaming.